Welcome to the Tepper School of Business Multimedia Series. For more information on the Tepper School at Carnegie Mellon, please visit us at www.tepper.cmu.edu/multimedia. And now, here's your selected video.
Thank you all for coming to today's W.L. Mellon Speaker Series event. I'd like to take a moment to introduce the speaker, Paul Fonteyne. Paul received an MS in chemical engineering at the University of Brussels before coming and completing a master's in industrial administration at our very own Carnegie Mellon University. During his time at Carnegie Mellon, Paul taught an undergraduate economics course and remembers classes with, among others, Professors Bob Damon and Rick Green. From these familiar walls, Paul went on to work at both Merck & Company and Abbott Laboratories before joining Boehringer Ingelheim. He now serves on the Board of Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, is a member of the New England chapter of CEOs Against Cancer, and has served as chairman of the National Pharmaceutical Council. Paul joins us today as the current Chief Executive Officer of Boehringer Ingelheim USA Corporation. Please join me in welcoming Paul Fonteyne.
Thank you, and I look forward to working with you in the future. He's joining the company. It's a great pleasure to be here. I've prepared a few remarks, but I want this to be as useful to all of you as possible. So I'll tell you what I've prepared, and then I'll invite you to add to the agenda so that I try to cover that as I run through my story. I want to tell you a little bit about my company. That's expected in these types of meetings. I want to tell you a little bit about how the experiences at Tepper translated into what I did in my career and how it helped, because in my case it did. Like with pharmaceuticals, I can't guarantee you it will work for each and every one of you, but in my case it was a wonderful thing. So anybody have any burning questions that they would like me to address as I'm running through the story? You can ask them now, and I'll incorporate them into the story. Because again, this time is for you. I know already what I'm going to tell you, but I want to tailor it as much as possible to the needs that you may have. Some of you were in the room already with me, the members of the club, so they know the drill. I think it makes for a better discussion for all of you. So, any specific wishes before we get going? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I'm a first-year MBA.
Hi.
Thank you for coming. I guess that I would love to hear about some of the turning points in your career.
Yeah.
And when you've made decisions that were a difficult decision but ended up being right, and when maybe you've made some decisions that you thought you might do differently.
Yep. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Paul. I'm a first year MBA student, and once again, thanks for listening to us.
Appreciate it.
The question I have is, does pharmacology research need to change going forward? And we need to see a much more improved response rates.
You seem to know a little bit about that. So I'll do my best, but I'm not an oncologist. Oh, yes, ma'am. Sorry.
My name is Neha. I want to understand when in your career you started thinking about being a CEO and becoming a CEO.
Not when I was at Tepper, I can tell you that. Anyone else? Yes, Haley.
I'm second year.
We know each other.
Sure.
We're upstairs together.
Since you're a student, I'm curious about what kind of comments are you really looking for, and what kind of conduct do you think is really ideal? That would be really good.
I'll hit that when I talk a little bit about the culture, but thank you. One more back there.
Tara, I'm a first-year MBA. Thanks for coming. Just wondering if you could speak as to what makes a good leader in your eyes, and any leadership skills you got here at Tepper that have helped you climb the corporate ladder, per se, at Boehringer Ingelheim?
That's a good one. I can speak to the amount of time we spent in 1987 talking about leadership, which was less than now. But there were other things that I think you guys are getting a far enhanced product than what the classroom was focused on in 1987. But thanks for these initial questions, because I think it will allow me to articulate a few of the pieces of the puzzle for you in a way that has more impact for all of you. So I appreciate it. So a little bit about my story. I came to GSIA in '85, and I'm an immigrant. I just left Belgium and came to the US and got into GSIA at the time, Tepper now. I didn't speak English particularly well, but I was a European engineer, so I was really, really good at all this math stuff. And so somehow managed to pick it up as I went. And I was really interested in healthcare in general. And so I had the destination in mind in terms of I want to do something in healthcare. But then, you get distracted. There's all these banks and consulting firms that come here, and you talk to them too. That's fine. But when I went through all these experiences, it's what resonated for me. And so after that, I joined a management development program at one of the big pharma companies, and that worked really well for me. The one thing I want to leave you with, what made a difference for me, is I went deep in terms of my understanding of an industry segment right off the bat. I did, and I stayed in the organization for long enough to get deep roots in the capabilities that were going to make me a good commercial executive. So that was a conscious choice on my end to really learn a trade. It looks a little bit like learning how to be a carpenter, and it is. You have to understand your industry. You have to understand something deep enough to have a home in terms of the skill base that you'll be able to market to your current or future employer in the future. I repeat this every time I get a chance. You gotta have a home from a skill perspective. You might be moving all over the world, but you gotta have a home. You gotta have something that you're uniquely good at. So I worked on that, and the thing I got really lucky on is a lot of the leadership I worked with at that time had significant star power, and a lot of them became CEOs. And one of them, actually, I'm speaking tomorrow night with. John will be there in New York City, is the gentleman, also a Tepper alum, that hired me into the industry. Howard Pien. He was CEO 3 times. I'm just getting started. So that learning the business from people like that early on. So when you do approach a clear vision of what you want your employer of choice to be, pay attention to the work, pay attention to the development opportunities and how they will allow you to go deep. Then try to have as many look and see trips as possible to get to know the people that are making the decisions, because they'll be the ones that you'll learn from. And they'll be the ones making decisions about you, by the way. So that helps too. So that's my words of advice and what really made a difference for me early on in my career. Let me give you a brief overview of what Boehringer Ingelheim, we can go with the abbreviation of BI, it's a little easier, what it is and what we do. All right, so hopefully you can see this from the back. We're privately held. It's rare that you have a company this size. We're about $17–18 billion a year. We're owned by a family and have been for 125 years. We're all over the world. We're the number 12 pharma company globally. That private equity, private ownership gives us something that I think is particularly well suited to developing new medicines, which you know that's an innovation cycle of about 15 years. And any way you shake it, stretch it, try to turn it upside down, it's still 15 years. And you got to have a certain continuity of leadership throughout these experiments, because that's what they are. And so I think that helps us be good at what we do. You can see we're in a number of disease states. We're in a number of businesses. We're quite diversified when it comes to healthcare. So we're in animal health. We're the largest, we're the market leader in animal vaccines, for example. Largest vaccine manufacturer for animals in the world. We're getting into the biosimilar business, which will prove to be an interesting journey. I think where not too many players will emerge, and therefore margins will be high, and that's what we look for. Our biggest business is our branded pharmaceutical, human pharmaceutical business, both OTC and RX. And then we have a few generic companies also. So we play in each and every segment of the provision of either human or animal pharmaceuticals, because we're in animal pharmaceuticals, animal vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. So you get a little bit of a sense of the breadth of commercial situations one could find yourself in, and research situations one you could find yourself in when you're dealing with such a broad portfolio. In the United States, we're about 11,000 of us. It's about a $7 billion business in the US. We're a relatively young company in the US because we're only 40-some years old. I have cars that are older than the company. So you can see we're headquartered for the US in Richfield, Connecticut, just about an hour north of New York City. And there are a number of sites, usually grouped by business. So Richfield, Connecticut is the anchor for the branded pharmaceutical business. That's where the labs are. That's where all my staff sits. That's where the commercial organization in pharma sits. The generic companies are in Ohio, not too far from here. There's a chemical business in Petersburg, Virginia, just a little south of Richmond. And you can see we have a biologics plant in the Bay Area. And then one thing I didn't know is the epicenter of animal health research is always within 100 miles of Iowa State. And that's where we are. And so that's where our animal health businesses are based. We have a number of sites there that do research, manufacturing, and everything it takes to run that business. So that's a little bit BI in the US. I'll skip this and give you a glimpse into the culture and what might be different about this company than others. Look at how, so the principles of how we lead and we learn, which is also an interesting concept, because we'll never stop doing that. And it's the fact that it's a question. Usually when you see values, they're statements. In this case, it's a question. Because we do recognize that the markets we serve will never stop changing, right? And so, and that the talent we will need will also never stop having to grow and develop to be able to serve the needs of, quite frankly, the largest segment of GDP in most countries, right? Especially in the industrialized nations. So it's taking initiative and getting connect, that's about leadership, right? Growing together is what am I doing to myself and to my team to continue to develop, to continue to, one, ensure that I'm still employable in a few years, because if I get stale, you know what's going to happen to me. And how do I help this team grow and stay ahead of the challenges that we all have going forward? The getting results is pretty straightforward. You need to do that too. One thing that's unique about this company, and I put up a fairly technical chart here, but I'll guide you through it, and I think I even have a build on it. Look at the number of opportunities. A typical pharmaceutical pipeline, and this is short term. So these things are significantly de-risked already. That's an unusual size of a pipeline for a company that's only 15 to 20 billion. And so whether it's The first one I've highlighted is an interesting one because it's one of those personalized medicine targeted therapies for lung cancer, where you have to have an EGFR positive mutation to receive the product. So you have to get the test and the medicine approved at the same time. But in that patient type, it will give you a superior result. And oncology medicines are pretty straightforward, especially in an indication like lung cancer. It's about overall survival. Did you actually help people live longer? Right? There used to be other endpoints before, progression-free survival. Okay, did the tumor grow or not? Well, who cares? Is the person still alive? And so and lung cancer used to be a 6-month death sentence and can still be, but the majority of patients now will live 18 to 24 months. And that's in a period of just 5 or 6 years of pharmaceutical innovation. Because there's really nothing new besides pharmaceuticals that's happened to cancer patients, especially lung cancer patients, in the last 10 or 15 years. And so when you think about, you know, I'm inviting you to get in an industry that you can feel passionate about. Those are the kinds of things where in now 26, 27 years of doing this, you know, having launched the statins in the United States, you start seeing the heart attack rate going down, you know you had something to do with that. And yeah, there's a lot of business mechanics and money that change hands in the background, but you're left with that notion that you played your part. Let's see what empagliflozin is our second diabetes medicine. We have a big partnership with Eli Lilly and Company that we run. And this is a BI medicine. It's one of, actually just this week, the first in class was approved. This one was filed last month and will get approved hopefully beginning of next year. It's a new class of medicines that takes advantage of the fact that our kidneys are particularly good at excreting a bunch of stuff, including glucose. So essentially it's a medicine that's, if you are diabetic and your glucose levels are too high, it's going to make you urinate glucose, which is totally counterintuitive to where physicians were trained. That was a bad thing. You couldn't have glucose in your urine. This one will make you excrete a lot of glucose, which at the same time will lower your weight. That's a problem in diabetics, and will lower your blood pressure. That's also a problem in diabetics. So this class of medicines has a lot of potential, and I think will be number 2 in the class in terms of sequence of entry. Spiriva is our largest product, it's about 4 billion euros worldwide. So it's a big pharmaceutical product, and we're still developing new indications for it. So you can evergreen your products for a certain period of time, especially if they have long patent lives and they have devices associated with them. If you're an inhaler, it's a lot easier to stay around for a long time than if you're a little white pill. That's very easy to make. Inhalers are particularly complex, and there is still today no path to genericization for inhalers in the US. Nintedanib is another drug that will make it for lung cancer and ovarian cancer. So second cancer drug. Then you get into combination products, Spiriva plus olodaterol. So Spiriva gives you, if you're a patient with COPD, you got about 1.5 liters left of lung capacity. I have about 5 to 6 liters. Most of you will be around 5. So you can imagine what kind of work it means to get up and down the stairs, to go to the mailbox, to go to the bathroom. Spiriva, if you're down to 1 liter, will give you 200 mLs on top. Spiriva plus olodaterol, which is a long-acting beta agonist, will give you up to 350 mLs plus. So now we're expanding lung capacity by about 35%. Right? You can see how easy it is to get passionate about these things. And that means this person can walk down the street as opposed to being out of breath by the time they get to the mailbox. That's what it means. Nintedanib, the last one I'll mention is nintedanib and IPF. Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, if you've heard of it, you know how bad it is. There's no treatment for it today. This treatment is in late-stage trials as an orphan drug, because it's a small population, to hopefully show an increase, for sure, in breathing capability. But given the mortality, most 50% of the patients with that are dead at 5 years, and some of them are young, that we'll see a mortality improvement as well. But it's the only drug that ever made it in the front page of the New England Journal in phase 2, ever. So we're proud of that one. It won't be a huge product, but it doesn't matter. So I just wanted to give you a sense of what was happening from a pipeline perspective. Here you can see, hopefully that's the marker of a well-managed company and a rich pipeline. It's sort of grown steadily over time. And you know, if you're a shareholder of this company, this is euros, by the way, because we report in euros. We're a euro-denominated company. And the sales and the profitability have continued to expand on average from year to year. And it's a pretty large company. But again, it's one of the largest privately held companies in the world, and we think that makes a difference for what we do. And then if in the United States, we've gotten acclaimed for the things you see on the board in terms of our support of certain initiatives and the recognition that we're a great place to work. Hopefully that will interest you in connecting with us at some point, because that is beyond being a faithful alum. I'm also a recruiter, and that's why I'm here. So some of you, I'm going to gear right into the questions I haven't already addressed. So that saves us a little bit of time, and then you can fire away at me in about 5 minutes. Oncology research. Oncology, when there was no background, you know, so how do you develop an oncology drug? You take the standard of care, and there's 4 or 5 drugs in there already, and you see if you can beat the standard of care in terms of making people live longer. It's that simple. So the background, as new medicines get developed, and I showed you a couple of them, the background keeps getting tougher and tougher to beat. And that's the game we always play when we develop new medicines. So I think what will happen is the science and the biology of the tumors will get more exquisitely precise, like the one I showed you, that where you have to be EGFR positive, whatever that means. And in that patient type, we can beat the standard of care. The days where you could beat the standard of care on the entire population, unless you're in a cancer type that has very few approved background therapies. Ovarian is the one where we're seeking that opportunity. With afatinib, we're looking at head and neck, where there isn't that many options. There aren't that many options for patients. So that's how you have to keep reinventing yourself. And you have to go, it's like high jump. You just have to jump higher each and every time. And the way you can do that is by focusing on a narrower population. And if you don't prove incremental benefit over the standard of care, first, you're not going to get approved, and if by accident you are approved, you're not going to get reimbursed. So it kills the business model. So fail early, fail often, and then find really where you can add value is I think, the path forward in oncology. Hopefully that answers your question. The other questions have to do a little bit about me. Which cannot be that interesting. But I'll try to help you with that. So when did I know that I was going to be a CEO? I think one of you asked that. Certainly not when I was at Tepper. And there was such a long path to get there. I think once I really started understanding what CEOs did for a living, and don't forget, some of you are going to work in the company, we'll have some contact from time to time, and you'll see what maybe some of the division heads are doing day in, day out. Your ability to get close to those people and sponge up the knowledge they have and how, particularly also how they behave and how they control themselves. I'm still learning that, but that's probably the ability to speak the language at that level. is probably, once I understood I could do that, and I was maybe a baby junior vice president when that happened, so I was probably 12, 13 years out of Tepper. Then I understood that I could probably take it to that level. But then it's got to happen. And you've got to be, there's always going to be more than one candidate, and you have to get the call. So there's a certain amount of luck involved. Let's not kid ourselves. But it's, when did I know? Like I said, between 10 and 15 years out. Once I'd observed enough what it took, because I had no idea what it took to do this job. And some people that work for me will tell you that I still don't. So that's at that point in your career. I knew I could make an impact. I knew I could work hard and add value at an entry level right off the bat, thanks to the coaching I was receiving from Howard at the time. So the first few steps, sort of the setting up the foundation, that went reasonably well. Then you're going to hit the wall usually. The separation takes place at that baby junior vice president level, which in my case was first in marketing and then in sales. So in marketing was leading a franchise of about 3 or 4 billion with all the challenges that involves. On that scale, you're going to see them all. And probably having gotten there a little bit too fast. Yeah, be careful there. That's when one of you asked about turning points. Okay, so you're going to get promoted pretty quickly because you are who you are. Congratulations. It happened to me as well. You're going to get there really fast. And you're going to outcompete people with far more experience and life experience than you to get there. That's all part of the deal. Relax. Once you get there, it gets really, really scary. Because you have to get there that fast, you have skipped a few steps, right? And so you have to all sort of gauge how much of that can I take? Because it's going to keep you up at night. So you have to constantly use your own barometer of what is this doing to my head and what is this doing to my life? Because you have to manage that, because that gets a little dangerous then if you don't manage it well. And forget the career part, it's about your life. So that's what, when I was able to navigate through those scary moments when I first made vice president, and when I was able to start managing large numbers of people, 1,000 plus, in late 30s, that's when I understood that I could connect with a broad team that had a very diverse set of needs, all in different places, all in different stages of aspiration, career, etc., and try to direct them to seek a greater goal and a common goal. I didn't know I could do that before you actually do it. And so for me, that was what opened up my eyes, and be glad to discuss it some more. And of course, the encouragement of a few of my sponsors, mentors, coaches, whatever you want to call them, that helps too. And I was fortunate to benefit from that kind of support. And companies that do a good job at developing talent, they usually have these people that may not be hierarchically very high up, sometimes they are, but they are particularly good at nurturing talent. Because if you don't make mistakes, I'm not sure you're trying hard enough. I want to see you make mistakes. I want to see you react in those situations and see how you treat your environment, how you treat yourself in those situations. The turning points, I think I just, one of you might have asked that. What were the turning points? I just mentioned one of them. The first time I had to motivate 1,000 people. And you don't meet them in a room like this, right? You need a convention center. And you're going to not motivate them for more than 20 minutes at a time, because that's about the attention span you have when you have 1,000 people in a room. And so how do you get an organization to do that. When you get to that level, I started doing 4 to 5 year stints in a single job. And that was the turning point where you had to sort of commit. You're going to be here. This is the team you're going to grow with or not. And these are the people you're going to develop. And this is how we'll reach for that goal. Once you start having to make these types of personal, emotional commitments, then I think you really start to understand leadership. And that made a big difference for me when I had to do that, you know, sort of late 30s or early 40s. And that's when you understand that you can do it on a bigger scale. Because you'll get plenty of feedback. You know, this is America in the 21st century, right? You're going to get at least one 360 a year. We're all blogging all the time, and people aren't shy. And they're going to tell you when you mess it up. And so you get a lot of feedback constantly. And so you learn how to self-regulate in all sorts of situations. Talent needs of the company. And I don't think this is specific to BI. But look, leadership is about, you're going to have changes in the environment, right? In any industry you go to. And let's say the rate of change in that industry is X. Can you push your people to change at faster than X? Right? Because then you'll be a little bit ahead of the game. If you decide that you can't push them as far or as fast as the environment is going to dictate, might be the time to retire. Might be the time to look for another line of work. But you have to, okay, what does this environment fundamentally require to be successful? What can I do with this organization, with this team, with these resources? And what's the best plan to get there? And can I get them moving fast enough? So in specific situations where I've had to do something really difficult, and in pharmaceutical marketing or in marketing in general, repositioning a brand significantly is one of the most difficult things you have to do. Because the company has probably been successful years and years doing one thing, and then the world changed. And you got to get everybody to sort of pivot and go do something else. And that is incredibly difficult. I've done it once before. It took me 1.5 years, 2 years. That was way too slow. You know, the difference between doing it faster and slower was probably $500 million a year. And so how fast will I do it next time? I think I'm going to have some opportunities in the months to come. So how fast will we drive this next time, and what have I learned from last time? I'll give you another opportunity. Sometimes change is really good. So when I was at Merck, we were marketing statins. Zocor was our major product. And there was this drug from Bayer, Baycol, that got pulled from the market. And I learned in that particular instance that getting your field force to drop everything and just focus on those Baycol patients that needed an alternative because their drug got pulled, within hours. Because physicians, you know, the pink slips of the messages stack up on their desk, and they're doling those out, you know. Within hours, you have to be in there and making sure they have the information, they have the samples, they have whatever they need, the formulary information to triage these patients back on your drug. So I learned that when Baycol was pulled. Then one morning, I'm giving a speech to I think it was a retirement seminar, to some of our employees that were reaching that stage of their career, and someone walks in and interrupts the retirement seminar. I said, well, I'm doing the retirement seminar, I'm not talking to you. Paul, you need to come this way. And it was CNN, and Merck was announcing that Vioxx had been pulled. And I was maybe 1.5 years at BI at that time, and we had a competitor called Mobic. And within 24 hours, we had tripled plant capacity. We had, each representative had like a month's worth of samples FedEx the next day to them. And it took Pfizer with Celebrex 2 weeks to react. So we got most of the Vioxx scripts. And that allowed me to fund the increase in our field force. We were a baby junior pharma company in the US at that time. We were only $2 billion in the US at that time. it funded the increase in marketing and sales investment I needed to have. So you're going to have these opportunities that come your way. They're not all negative, but the next time you do them, beat what you did the time before, and good things will happen. And if you stay long enough in that trade, good things will happen, because the unmet medical needs are still huge. And as long as you have an R&D machine that can deliver, and I've shown you that ours is not bad at delivering, you're going to have opportunities that come up like this. So I've touched on a few of the points that you wanted me to illustrate. I think I'm going to speak to the benefit of our sponsor. The time that I did at Tepper helped me understand a lot of things. The analytical skills you learn here and how they can then translate into something you can have an impact with, whether that's a communication around a marketing plan, whether that's an investment plan. You're going to know how to cut through the maze of stuff that you're going to have to deal with. And if I leave you with one, before we return to the Q&A part, with one message is you've made the right choice. That skill set of being able to contemplate a lot of information and say, give me one of those and two of those and here's your story, that's it. That's what I learned here, and that's what I practiced the last 25 years, and it hopefully has something to do with what I do today. So let's continue the Q&A, but I've touched on a few of the points that you've all raised so far, and hopefully you're getting a sense that the good news about being privately held is I can be quite transparent. You know, I don't have any SEC lawyers on my back, so that's the benefit of private equity as well. So please, I'll go here and then here. Go ahead, sir.
Kevin Gallagher, I'm first year MBA. First, I want to thank you for coming.
Appreciate it.
And my question has to do with, you run a very complex multinational segment of a multinational business that has different parts, animal health, pharma. How do you manage that complexity, and how do you stay up to, up to par in each of those different segments? And do you delegate it, or do you control certain portions of that?
So, good point. It's around what do you need to know to be effective. So there are routine meetings as part of the course of business. It's usually called a budget or business review or talent review, where you're going to get to immerse yourself. And I have enough background knowledge by now to be able to understand quickly what's going to matter. Because there are some common capabilities around all of these businesses. That's why they live under the same house, under the same roof. So first, if you don't have the right people feeding you in those businesses, feeding you the right understanding and the right diagnosis, then your job becomes pretty simple. You just need someone else. That's point number one. So you're not going to be successful in this role if the folks running these businesses are not at par or above. And I would argue above, because remember my comment about leadership is about staying ahead of the curve in terms of the rate of change of the environment. If they're not capable of doing that, you're going to suffer. You're going to have to jump in. It's not going to be fair to the other division heads that work for you, because you're going to be dealing, maybe not with the biggest business, but with the most problematic one. Because you can't lose money in this business. It doesn't look like that when you look at our annual reports, but it's possible to lose money, a lot of it, because it's fundamentally a fixed cost business. There's not so much in there that's really variable. You've got to be out there with the teams. So the administrative part of the job should be discarded, eliminated, and it's okay if it's a little late. Oh, you haven't finished all your talent management plans. That's fine. I'm talking to the people right now. I'm getting to know them more. So you have to be out there, and you have to spend time with those teams to really appreciate what they do. Find out what's going to matter in a given year. So this year, I'm dedicating to the pharma business and my 2 generic businesses, and then a couple of things I want to do with the culture. So what do you start out with for the year? You're going to start with only 4 or 5 things on your list. your ability to stick in a disciplined fashion to these 4 or 5 things. And by the way, you have to be right when you pick the 5. If you're wrong, okay, there goes a year. And hopefully they let you have the next one. So you have those 5 things and you're right, and they're the right ones to drive growth and to drive the team. Then you have a chance of getting deep on these issues. And the rest of the stuff, you show up, you give a nice speech, and you make everybody feel good, and hopefully you have the right president for that business unit running it the right way, because you have no clue. So make a choice is the, and then on those things where you made a choice, go deep. And the rest is just going to have to happen. Someone here. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Crochet. I'm the first year MBA student as well.
Hi.
I'm curious about what your biggest challenge has been. Has it been like something in your balancing your personal life or a particular industry situation or something about the business?
At what point in time?
Throughout your career.
Okay. I've been very fortunate. I have not suffered too much on the work-life balance side. I've been able to be pretty efficient. And I have great support that does a lot of stuff for me. So and I can use them in a way they want to be used again. So that works really well. The biggest challenges are usually when you have to change something fundamental about the business or about who you are. Those are the hardest ones. So it's kind of like that repositioning a brand after 5 or 6 years in the market, like I said. That's really, really hard. Changing the business model of a company. Let's say you have a company that's in a market that is just fundamentally declining. All the inertia in the company will drive you to keep doing the same thing over and over. Boss, we'll just work a little harder. We'll travel less. We'll pay more at the cafeteria. We'll just save a buck here. And it doesn't work. Especially when you're running businesses with large portions of fixed costs. Once they start getting eroded a little bit, it becomes very hard to keep them thriving without fundamentally changing something different. So we talked in the group before this meeting, we talked a little bit about manufacturing in pharmaceuticals. Big portion of the balance sheet, very small portion of the income statement. What do you do with that? And by the way, tens of thousands of employees in most pharma companies. So how did that happen? What can you do? Well, we like to control our supply chain and we're better at, no, you're not better at than the others at this. There are people that are far better at it than we are. And so how do you start moving something that was very germane to who we were as a company to outsource it in large part? It doesn't have to be very far away, but just move it off the balance sheet. Because if it is only 5 to 10% of cost of sales, and that's if you do a lousy job at it. If you do a good job at it, it should be 1 to 2% of sales. And your R&D is 25% of sales. And your marketing and sales is 25 to 30% of sales. Where do you think you should spend your time? And then you start questioning, well, why have we been spending so much time worrying about our plants? And they get into all sorts of trouble with regulatory agencies, and some of them have unions, and what's that all about? And that's a mess. And those changes over time, as the business model gets a little bit more pressured, you start saying, well, where would I want to put this capital? Do I want to put it in a piece of equipment? Or do I want to put it in something else? Those are the things that are usually the hardest to deal with. And of course, as you flex these elements of your, in this case, the balance sheet, you've got impact on sites, on communities, on people that have to be dealt with, and have to be dealt with in the right way. Because the world is very transparent today. And so if you especially think of the European Union, which was our traditional base, do you think the plant in France is not talking to the plant in Greece, is not talking to the plant in Portugal? They're all talking as to how you're handling these types of situations. And so you could end up in a really bad situation with the next plant you want to repurpose or close or sell or whatever if you didn't do it right the time before. So you usually get one shot at doing it right. Sometimes you don't get any shot, but those are the hardest things. Hopefully that helps. Yes, sir.
It's Kamal from first year MBA.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for coming. I talked about people running the business. So could you please talk about how do you pick the people who run your business? How do you develop them?
Well, I used to be one of them. I think it's what does that business and that team, never hire for the position, always hire for the career and for the team. So you could be, the only way I will hire for a position if the house is on fire. So we're in the middle of a crisis. I need a star athlete to take care of this problem. We'll pay them a lot of money, and in 2 years they'll be gone when the problem is solved. And they'll be happy and we'll be happy. But in general, you want to hire for a career. So the people that are running our businesses were hired when they finished a program like this one, were hired at lower levels of management and then grew with the company and are now part of a slate of candidates that we have to take these jobs. If you have a functional human resource process, it should yield you your next head of pharma, your next head of animal health, your next head of GX. It should yield you that. Now, sometimes we have to go outside because we like to mix it up a little bit, because the trap in your on the homemade bread is that it all looks and feels the same after a while, and the markets change much faster than that. So hopefully that answers your question a little bit, but my advice when you'll be in a position to do this, think what that team needs. For example, let's say you have one really introverted person that's really, really smart, and you've got a bunch of really loud ones that are the other 9. That could be a factor as to who you bring in next. Because if the value is being generated by the quiet one, you better make sure he or she has a buddy on the team. I'm making it very simple, but it's considerations like that will make a difference. If you've got a team of which happens very often in pharmaceuticals, very deep scientists, i.e., a lot of analytical expertise, a lot of scientific expertise. None of them are really all that emotional. Think about how that projects to a broader team of employees that want to see a little vision, want to see a little bit of emotion coming from their leadership. How do you mix that up? Because if we're all, deeply analytical and have such a low voice, and it doesn't work. So you're going to have to get into those types of very basic elements to make sure you have a team that can really go at it in any circumstance, and that has enough of a skill base between all of them. You'll never find one person that can do everything. It's extremely rare. You're going to have to assemble a team that together can do just about everything. And then you're going to have to make them work together. That's the hard part.
I believe we have time for one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Ling, first year MBA. So you talk about from the company's perspective to hire for career. But what about from personal career development perspective? Is it better to work for the same company for many years or to work for different companies in the same industry?
You got to work for a company long enough to have an impact. And that's what I meant when I started out by saying, go deep, learn skills for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. The shortest I was with a company was like 9 years. And because you're going to get inside the fabric and inside the heads of people like me or people that work for me and learn from them more if they get to know you and if they get to work with you, nurture you, develop you. If you hip and skip around, if you skip around, you might do very well for other reasons. But if you're going to be in that industry, I always advocate to work for one company long enough to be able to get a good base of skills Because progression in any company, whether you're joining at that level or you're getting promoted into that level, will be a function of what kind of results can you deliver for me, and how have you demonstrated that, i.e. what have you done? Show me the impact of your work. Because as you saw in our culture statement, is that, are we delivering results? Well, in an interview I would lead, I would say, show me when you've delivered results. And I'm not talking about projects being handed out on time. I'm talking about business impact. I'm talking about leadership impact. So how many of your people got promoted? You know, what specific product were you able to impact in terms of their growth trajectory? Those kinds of things. You got to be able to have enough experience to be able to show that. I think the business model in pharmaceuticals is such that at the end of the day, it's about putting as many patients as appropriate on the product and having them benefit. That takes time. In other industries, the cycle time's a little faster. But in our industry, it's going to come down to, I'll paraphrase it in a way we like to talk about, is did you bring more health to patients? And how many of them? And how fast? So hopefully that answers your question. Thank you. So I think this is the part where I close, right? Thank you for your attention. Appreciate all your good questions. Our leadership team that is doing the recruiting, raise your hand, will be available, and as I will. I hope this was helpful to you, help you consider a few things that I hope you think about as you approach a very important decision in your development, and the payback on the investment you're making with the time and the money that you've invested being here. So, Dean Damon, John, thank you very much for having me here, and I appreciate everyone's attention. Thank you very much.